going on, guys? It's Brian coming to you from the TST Industries garage. As you can see behind me, I have a 2019 model year Yamaha R3. We've had this in the shop for a little while, and we noticed that there weren't a lot of great solutions for frame sliders. So we went ahead and developed those on our own. They are a cut style frame slider. We do prefer those here at TST. They're a little bit stronger than those no cuts. You usually do a little bit less damage when you do go down. The no cuts can bend or break and then actually cause more damage to your bike or your fairings. So we went ahead and developed the cut style frame slider. So we're gonna go ahead and get into our box, start showing off some of these components. You'll have an instruction sheet. That's something we'll touch on later. But here we have our beautifully machined aluminum spacers. These are going to offset the puck ever so slightly. Typically we like an inline mounting style, but on this bike specifically that wasn't possible. There are some clips and fasteners that are right in that region where your frame bolt will go, so we had to offset it, but we've developed a really nice machined aluminum part that's going to do just that for us. Here we have the other side. This will come in two different variants. We're going to be installing the street version kit today, but we will actually have a race version for you racers that don't want such a long puck. We know that the guys on the street typically won't have a race incident where they're going to dump the bike and it's going to hit the grass, possibly grabbing that puck and doing some damage. So we do offer that race version for our racers that aren't so worried about the fairings, but do just want to protect some of their components like their hand controls and your foot controls and that sort of stuff. The installation is pretty straightforward. It goes a lot like the other installs that we've done for frame sliders. It is a cut style again, so we are gonna have to do some chopping the fairings, but we'll walk you guys through it so that you get a really clean result and a really clean outcome. Let's jump right into it, guys. All right, guys, so we're gonna start on the left side of this motorcycle. We have to take off some of these accessory fairings, being this black one here, and then there's another black one up there. So to start, we're gonna use these two bolts. We're gonna remove them using an M4. All right, and then to remove this fairing, we're going to really gently take our hand, get kind of underneath, press down. There's this little return tab that goes up under the seat, so we're gonna wanna remove that, and then we can go ahead and walk our hand forward, removing these clips one at a time. I like to do the top first, and then we'll be able to get the bottom. Comes off just like that. We'll go ahead and set that off to the side. Now we're going to move to this upper panel here. So we're still going to need that 4mm Allen. I'm now going to enlist the help of a small flathead screwdriver. We have 3 push fasteners that are going to be on this black fairing here. So we're going to go for the first one, which is up near the dash. Just push the center in and pull the rest out. Keep those in a safe location. And then the second one, you're not going to be able to see it, but I can feel it. It's right here by the fork leg when the bike is with the wheel completely straight. And then the second one is about 3 inches back from there. So we're going to go ahead and push on that inside of that fastener. And then 1 and 2. Then we're going to go ahead and take this fairing and lift from the inside and work your way out, very similar to this fairing here. Just releasing those tabs and then kind of pull up and back that way. Then you got to do a little bit of wiggling to get, and I'll show you. This geometry here hides behind the dash, so you have to do a little bit of a snaking motion to get this out. We can now go ahead and take a Phillips head screwdriver. We're going to need to release the internal splitters here on the front. So there are going to be 2 screws down here at the bottom that are going to hold the left and right fairings together. If we remove those, we will have free access. So just so we're on the same page, because you couldn't see what I was doing, these are the black screws that I was referring to. They are Phillips head Plastite screws. Just go ahead and keep those, and you'll see the bottom of that fairing is now free floating. So we're going to go ahead and take our 4mm Allen again. There's a lower bolt here. This is a shoulder bolt. That is going to set this bolt apart from the other ones that we took off. The other ones are interchangeable. They're all the same length, all the same size. but this is going to be the only one that is different on this side, so you'll just want to keep track of that. We're going to go ahead and grab a 10mm socket now. There is this small fastener here that holds on the fairing to your coolant reservoir. Go ahead and keep that nut, and go ahead and grab that washer as well. Just keep those together. So we're going to keep that 10 and actually come up to the top again. Once we removed that kind of interlocking fairing there, it did reveal one of our last bolts that we're going to have to remove. Yet another style bolt. This one is going to have a washer that is captured on it. Just make sure that that one gets back into the same location. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my Phillips head screwdriver again and just keep it really handy because we're going to need to remove the signal in just a moment here. So we can go ahead and take this fairing, start to pull it away from the bike. There are some pop fasteners or push fasteners, whatever you'd like to refer to them as, that are one here by the tank and one down there by where the frame slider is going to mount. So we're going to go ahead and remove those, pull the fairing away delicately. You're going to be attached up here still. But once we have that, we can go ahead and take the fairing and walk forward a little bit, making sure that the front releases as well. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and have to navigate our wires out of the little retaining channels. All right. And then this is why I kept my screwdriver handy, because I'm going to have to get in here behind the signal try to show you guys and remove this plug from the signal to the fairing. So pulling up on this tab, it will just pop off just like that. And there we have it, guys. We have our fairing. And now we're going to take this over to our table. All right, so we're over here on my table where I'll be working. I did go ahead and set down a cloth, just an old bed sheet or something, just to make sure that when I'm working with my fairing and it's face down, we're not scratching any of the painted surfaces. Now there is one more thing before we get into cutting that we'll have to remove here. There's this kind of internal splitter here. We're gonna have to take this out. The way that our template sits and where our actual frame slider sits, you won't be able to run this anymore. You might be able to Dremel it away. We've actually just chosen to forego it at all. It doesn't actually do anything for the structural rigidity of your fairings. It's just kind of more for aesthetics. From when you're sitting on the bike and looking down, you'll see that kind of little vented area that's right here, but we've chosen to run without that. So to remove that, we're going to use a push tab fastener that has to come out and then 2 Phillips head screws. So let's get that done. And just like that, that comes out, set it off to the side. So I went ahead and grabbed my drill, a very small drill bit, and then my hole saw and some tape. I first want to talk to you guys about these templates that we have here. There are many methods of locating where your frame slider is going to go. You could, in theory, throw on that spacer and then locate where your hole center is via a laser. That's how we do it the very first time. But knowing that you guys don't typically have specialty tools like that, we go ahead and develop these very nice, safe to use cut templates. So what you're going to want to go ahead and do is cut these out. Obviously use the left fairing side on the internal of the left fairing, the right side on the right side. Pretty straightforward. Make sure that these little intricate geometries get cut out really nicely. In the event that for some reason you screw up your cuts, you can always call us. We'd be able to send you a file and you could print it up again yourself if you so need to. To save time on our video, I went ahead and already cut out my left side template. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to locate that. We have some geometry here that captures a little round portion right underneath this screw boss, and then another little cutout that's going to locate right next to this push fastener. So we're going to go ahead, take our template, drop it down in, push it up against this face, and then make sure that this line here lines up with the top of this little fairing insert that creates that kind of fin-like geometry on the outside. So once we have it in a location that we're happy with, making sure that these geometries have located really nicely and they line up, we're going to go ahead and take some tape. I like to do a couple locations, so grab a couple of pieces there. So with our template in place, I'm going to come from the other side actually and hold on to that. Again, make sure that this line lines up with that fairing and these geometries locate around this mounting boss very nicely. I like to put my first piece of tape right there at the bottom. My second piece is going to go up here at the top. I'm going to do another little one on the other side of that hole center where we'll be drilling, just to make sure that this stays in place. And then my last one can go right there just to make sure the template doesn't move on me at all. All right, so with all that squared away, you want to do one more visual inspection, make sure everything is lined up nicely, everything's parallel or concentric where it needs to be. We can go ahead and take our drill. I like to use the smallest drill bit possible. We're going to go ahead and locate right on that hole center and really slowly make sure that it doesn't walk. Bust right through that fairing. With that done, we can go ahead and remove this template and we're going to flip over to the other side. So now that we're over here, I'm going to go ahead and switch my drill over to my hole saw. This is a 2 1/8 or 54 millimeter hole saw. That's going to give us just a little bit of tolerance either way on those frame sliders, just in case they do walk a little bit, or perhaps your template was off by, a millimeter or two. You will have a little bit of play there and you will be able to still fit that fairing on very nicely. So to make sure our painted surfaces stay protected, I'm going to take some tape, just kind of oversized tape the area. Obviously, we'll be taping over our pilot hole at this point, so you're going to want to make sure that you can still locate that after the fact. I'm going to poke it out right now with my drill bit. Just make sure that I still know exactly where that is. It's probably overkill, but I like to do 2 pieces horizontal and 2 pieces next to that vertical, just to really protect that fairing. Then I'm going to put that hole saw up, make sure that I have a nice boundary of tape everywhere that I am going to be cutting with that hole saw. At this time, we can go ahead and actually start cutting. So you're going to want to make sure that the tip of your hole saw, or the locating drill bit, goes right into the center of where our pilot hole was. You will want to make sure that your pilot hole was smaller than whatever drill bit you have inside your hole saw. Obviously, if I put my hand behind this, we do need to be careful of how close to that hole we are, so I'm just going to support the edge of the fairing, making sure that I'm nowhere near it. And then the last consideration that we have to make is the fairing slopes down on the bike, so you kind of want to be a little bit over perpendicular towards yourself if you're working towards the top of the fairing, so that you get that straight mounting hole where the fairing, or where the frame slider is actually going to come out of the bike. So we're going to go ahead and set that drill bit down. Really slowly start to work our way into this fairing. All right, guys, there we have it. Nice hole in our fairing. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and pull our tape off, do a visual inspection of the hole. You'll see I got a little bit of plastic melt here, so that's why I went ahead and grabbed this file. We're gonna wanna use something that's kind of semi-round. If you don't have a file, you can use a box cutter. Just be very careful. We're gonna go single direction, just to make sure we're not pulling up on that paint plastic interface. We're just gonna kind of run around the hole, make sure that all these little burrs and stuff are removed. All right, so with our hole cleaned up, we're gonna go ahead and jump over to the bike, install that frame slider, and then go ahead and reassemble the fairing in the same way that it came off. All right, so at this time we can come over to the bike again. I have an 8mm Allen here that we're going to use to take out this M10 bolt that is holding our engine and our frame actually. Luckily we have a number of other fasteners that will be doing that work for us, so we can go ahead and pull this one out. That will come out with a washer. Make sure that that comes out with it. I do just want to touch on, if you just opened your bike up for the very first time, you may have a little plastic cap there. This bike has had another frame slider on it previously. It was a no-cut style. We went ahead and replaced that, so that's why that cap wasn't there for us. But with that being said, we can go ahead and take our left side bracket here. You'll know that because the counterboard hole is going to be in front of where the tapped hole is, so your frame slider is going to mount a little bit behind where your actual frame bolt goes through. So we're gonna go ahead and take that bracket. You'll see this nice locating feature here for this cross brace. So you're gonna wanna locate that around that brace, insert that puck into that hole, take one of the supplied M10 bolts, drop it through, and just go ahead and start hand threading, making sure that you're getting nice engagement, doesn't feel wonky or anything. Do not want to cross thread your engine. I want to make sure that this doesn't kind of rotate out of the way. It does have the opportunity to do that, so you just want to hold that up against that brace. All right, so we're going to go to bottom out. There is one thing I want to touch on here. That little locating geometry does have a little bit of play, so you can have a shift of about a degree or two in angle. So you want to make sure as you're tightening down that you try to keep it a little bit more towards the front, because as you put that torque on it, we're going to torque this bolt down to the OEM spec. It will try to rotate it back down a little bit. So as you're tightening down, just try to make sure that it stays more towards the front until we throw that final torque on it. One other thing I want to touch on, you'll see here we have a very, very small gap between our radiator hose and this mounting geometry. If for any reason your hose is actually resting on that, I have found that you can take this clamp here on the radiator hose and just kind of move that hose up and out of the way, just so that you don't put this hose at any risk in terms of vibration and rubbing against this bracket here. So with that being said, we're going to grab our torque wrench. We're going to set it to 37 foot-pounds. All right, we're going to go ahead and torque this guy down. There we are. So with our bracket installed, we're going to take a delrin puck, an M10 insert sleeve, drop that down in, make sure that this flange side is facing out. And then we're going to take another M10 hex head, drop that down in. We'll need a 14mm socket for that. Go ahead and locate that socket. Start to thread this guy on. All right, so now that we're at bottom out, I'm going to take my torque wrench again. We're going to drop it 10 foot-pounds to 25. Then we're going to go ahead and torque this down. And there we have it. At this point, we can go ahead and take our fairings. We're going to put them back on, double check that everything's in the right position. If we have to, we could go ahead and pull this puck back off, try to relocate that bracket, or even try to mess with the fairing a little bit, maybe clean up the hole if we're off ever so slightly. All right, guys, so we could go ahead and take our fairing with our newly cut hole. We're going to want to locate this fairing over the frame slider, but try not to get any of those other push fasteners just yet, because you want to locate the front of this simultaneously as we're going over the frame slider. Making sure the clips along here also get engaged. You can go ahead and slide up and back. Want to make sure that this little grommet here doesn't get pushed through like mine almost just did. Make sure that that locates properly, and then we do have that push fastener right by the fairing, or right by the frame slider rather. Push that in, and then one up here by the tank. And then in terms of hardware, it's just going to be the exact same as what we took off. So we're going to need our bolt here, 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 and then the rest of the accessory fairings. So I'm going to jump right into that. I do just want to mention before I totally crank this down, you do have a little bit of adjustability. These are slotted, most of these holes. So if you have, if a 2 mil gap in the bottom and a mil gap in the top, if you hold your fairing up as you tighten down and bottom this out, you can make up gaps like that to make it look a little bit cleaner. But as long as your puck comes through the fairing cleanly, doesn't engage or doesn't hit the rest of the fairing, you're pretty much good to go. All right, so before I throw on the other accessory fairings, you do just want to go ahead and locate your wires back into the places that they were, those little hooks. You definitely want to be sure to reconnect your signal. It's kind of a pain to do after the fact. All right, I could go ahead and grab that upper fairing now. You're going to want to kind of go the exact opposite of the way we came in, so snake it into the side. There's little clips, make sure that those sit in front of where they need to be, and then they slide into position. Should get a little pop from some of them. Grab one of those M4. We're going to go ahead and take our push fasteners. There is one with a little felt washer. You're going to want to put that one up near the dash. The other two you can't see, but remember it's right here by this fork leg, and then one about 3 inches back behind that. We're going to take those 2 Plastite style screws that attach this splitter at the bottom, come from the other side. And then we're going to go ahead and grab our last kind of accessory fairing here. Just before I throw this on, I do want to point out this bike is fitted with our Works TST airbox and funnels. That is because it's going to be a race bike. It's a really cool thing that we do here where we take the OEM airbox stuff, actually shave off some of the outer regions of it and let this bike breathe a little bit more. It's really restricted from the factory. So we went ahead and installed that on this bike. You do get to see that, but once we throw this fairing back on, it gets hidden again. So we do just want to be careful. There are these kind of straight locating pins here. They're very easy to bend. So you're going to want to locate the bottom ones first, then the top, and then push in this push fastener and assemble with those screws. You can feel when they all drop in like that. There we are. Then we could go ahead and take this portion of the fairing, locate it up underneath the seat, and go ahead and engage that push fastener. Just by kind of pushing evenly on the fairing. And then take the last of our 2 screws. The final step, now that we're happy with all of our mounting and our locations, is to take our little aesthetic cosmetic cap here. Pop that guy right on the edge. You might want to take a mallet. They do have a seal on them. Make sure that your logo is nice and lined up. You wouldn't want to hammer it in there if it's sideways. You can get them out, but a little difficult to remove. Just kind of tap evenly, make sure it goes in straight. And there we have it, guys. Frame slider on the left side. Let's go to the right side. It's very much the same. I'm going to speed through it, but you guys will see all the details that go into it. All right, guys, we're over here on the right side of the bike. This is really, really similar, so I'm not going to do a whole lot of explaining. There's one fastener that's different, but everything else is the same. So I'm going to start up here with this top fairing. So this is that one fastener I was talking about. It's gonna be an 8mm socket. It's gonna be a bolt instead of a nut. Just make sure that you keep that bolt in its little countersunk washer. So with our bracket installed, we did on the left side install the street version, but I'm going to, on the right side, just so you guys can see, install the race version, which is a little bit shorter. All right guys, so with our right side fairing back on, you can see here how much less this race puck does protrude. It is for you racer guys that want just a little bit of protection for your hand controls, foot controls, that sort of stuff, but don't really care about protecting the fairing so much. So it is gonna be a better option for you racers. But that installation was pretty straightforward, aside from where you have to cut your fairings. But even then, if you have the proper tools, it's really, really easy. Makes this job pretty simple. The templates, dead on, give you a perfect gap around your frame slider puck there. I think that these are probably some of the better ones that we've ever developed. I think that there weren't a whole lot of great options for this bike, so I'm really happy that we were able to step in, machine something, and get a prototype on here, and that actually move into production with these frame sliders. I think these are gonna be an awesome, awesome addition to many other parts that we have for this bike already. There are a lot of crash protection parts that did carry over from the previous generation, just unfortunately not the frame sliders. We do have our GP lifters on this bike. I did show you that we have our modified airbox. There are a number of other parts that are on this bike, too many to list to be honest. So go ahead and check out our website at tstindustries.com. Go to your product category, scroll through, you'll find a ton of stuff. We have videos installing almost everything we have for this bike. So go ahead and give it a check out, guys. I'll catch you next time. It's been Brian.